All right, welcome to a crossover edition of Locked On Heat and Locked On Knicks. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat and Locked On Knicks your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with my co-host on Locked On Heat, David Ramil, and the co-host of Locked On Knicks, Alex Wolfe. We're going to get together here before a big Game 3 in Miami. We're going to talk about what both teams need to do to win that game, X factors for this next game. But first, 2 games in, series tied 1-1. I just want to start with the big storylines facing each team. David, I'll start with you. The biggest storyline for the Miami Heat.
Well, it's pretty obvious. I think it's the impending injury status of Jimmy Butler. Latest reports are that it looks optimistic that he's going to be playing in Game 3, but that changes the outcome so much of what Miami can and can't do. I think we saw Miami's gutsiest effort in Game 2, where they had so many different players step up. Gabe Vincent, Bam, Caleb Martin, etc. And yet, without Jimmy Butler, this is a very, very different team. I think that goes without saying. We expect him to play, and if that being the case, then I think Miami has a good opportunity to win Game 3 if he's welcome back and he's able to play at the high level that we've seen throughout the playoffs. So that is, at least from a Heat perspective, the biggest storyline going into Game 3.
And then Alex, the biggest one for the Knicks.
It's funny. Injuries seem to dominate the conversation this time of year, don't they?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat now. Granted, Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson both played in the most recent game, which obviously helped them quite a bit. Brunson went crazy. Randle, I thought, had a really good effort as well, considering how quickly he was coming back from his sprained ankle. But their health is going to be very important for the Knicks going forward in this series. Also, Mitchell Robinson has alluded to feeling like he has an issue with his hip, which he does not seem quite as spry as he's been, especially that last game that really stood out, which is why, I'm sure you guys noticed too, like Isaiah Hartenstein played a much better game overall than Mitchell Robinson did in the last game, because Mitch just seemed like he was having a really hard time tagging Bam Adebayo if they were screening up high, and he was having to kind of shade out to the shooter and then recover to Bam. Right. That seemed really difficult for him. So those 3 guys are the main ones that are banged up right now. And, Julius, I think, will be okay. Jalen, I think, will be okay. Mitch, I think, will be okay. But, can they get, actually healthy in these 3 days? If they get 3 days worth of treatment and rest, it seems like reports coming out of the Knicks side is that they're not being very rigorous with practice and stuff over these few days. They're really trying to get themselves right and get healthy and be ready to attack these final games. So I think health is really the big thing for both sides. I think whichever team can stay healthy and put on their best effort, at 100%, might be the team that wins this series, because health is definitely plaguing both sides here.
And all the guys that you talked about basically are playing big minutes. Mitchell Robinson, like you said, they have Hartenstein at least to back him up. So if he can't really go, you have a capable center to fill in. But in terms of Randle and Barrett and these guys, they play heavy minutes. Jimmy Butler obviously plays heavy minutes. And in addition to Jimmy Butler, the Heat had a couple of guys get hurt in Game 2. Max Strus, Caleb Martin, they got shaken up pretty bad in Game 2. They're also going to get those 3 full days off. That's kind of also part of the storyline, is that long gap in between games. And then for Jimmy Butler, it's been 5 full days, right? For him to get right. I still think if that were Game 7, he probably plays in Game 2. All the indications are that it wasn't nearly as bad as the Heat had feared in terms of his right ankle. And so I think he's going to come back. Nobody's 100% at this point. A lot of people have those nagging injuries. It's just what player can kind of push through it and get to the other side of it. And to your point, Alex, kind of give your best effort. Can I throw one other just sort of different? It's not the main storyline, but kind of like a B storyline, it's like the Kramer storyline to the Seinfeld episode here. The coaching matchup between Eric Spoelstra and Tom Thibodeau. I think we've already seen, for health reasons, the Knicks didn't have Julius Randle, so they had to play in a certain way in Game 1. The Heat didn't have Jimmy Butler, so they had to use a whole lot of zone and stuff like that they don't really want to do in Game 2. But considering everything that we're talking about and some of the uncertainty with how your players are going to look and all this stuff, the coaching matchup to me is so intriguing. We just saw the coach that the Heat beat in the first round. He just got fired. Mike Budenholzer doesn't have a job anymore. The Knicks, Tom Thibodeau coached circles around Bickerstaff in that Cavs series. And these 2 coaches are much more evenly matched than what they were dealing with in their first round matchups. And I think in the first 2 games, we've seen the chess match start a little bit. It kind of feels like they've set the table. They've kind of set the terms of engagement here, and they've seen some things Tom Thibodeau, I thought, did an excellent job, as well as Jalen Brunson kind of busting that heat zone in that fourth quarter. I think that Spo, it's up to him now to sort of adjust. I think the games were played more the way that Spo wanted to play in game one. I thought the game two was played more the way that Tibbs wants to play those games. So who gets the coaching advantage in game three, game four, and just going forward in this series? I think that's fascinating just from a dorky basketball perspective, like all the little adjustments that we're going to see get made.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, honestly, you might have been even more bullish on Tibbs than I have been so far. Like game one, I thought he got totally outclassed by Spoelstra.
I'm with you. He were way more prepared.
He were way more prepared. They were like the Knicks came in game one, and the way that I put it on our show when I was talking with Gavin was like the Knicks came in still thinking that they were facing the Cavs, and they played the exact same way. And that like stretch at the beginning of the third quarter in game one was like the most thorough, like embarrassing stretch I've seen out of the Knicks in a while, where it was just like every time the rebound would come down and Kevin Love would get it, they were completely unprepared for the possibility that Jimmy Butler would run the floor and go get a layup. And then he did it like 4 times and they didn't react.
Kevin Love
to it
outlet pass. That's been on the scouting report for every team playing Kevin Love for the last 10 years.
Since college. Yeah, literally. That was on his scouting report going into the 2008 NBA draft. Like, it's been since forever, and they just seemed totally unprepared for that and then didn't adjust to it. And that was sort of just like the story of game one. Game two, yeah, I'm with you. I think he did a better job. And the Knicks finally, it only took like 3 years with Tibbs, but they figured out how to bust a zone. It just took till the playoffs to figure it out. And they finally, I think the biggest thing was running the offense through Julius Randle more too, and letting him kind of operate out of the high post, kick to the corners, draw that attention in, and then spray it out to shooters who were actually hitting shots, which is obviously very important as well. But Brunson is great in that capacity too. Just spotting up and hitting a three, which if he's feeling a little hobbled right now is probably the best way to do it with him. But yeah, I'm with you. Like it's going to be interesting to see. And I think the big strengths of both guys at this point, I think Spoelstra, honestly, we've been saying on our show, like, I think he's the best coach in the NBA right now, period. I mean,
we've been saying that on our show too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he drags these rosters with the Heat to the playoffs every single year, drags them to like ECFs and everything else. And of course, like Jimmy Butler plays his part and everything else. But the one common denominator over the last, like, however many years, like 15 years, whatever, with Spoelstra is Spoelstra, and he's just a fantastic coach. I think he's a much better in-game adjuster. I think Tibbs's best thing is his in-between game adjustments and getting ready for each new game. And if the game can stick to the script that he wants it to be, then the Knicks can be in good shape. And so I'm really curious to see what his idea of a great game is in game three.
David, I was curious. Yeah, I was curious. All right, before we move on, what's the adjustment that you see for Tibbs in game three? Like, assuming Jimmy plays, and Tibbs seems to think that he will, what do you think he's going to do differently now that Jimmy would be back in the layup? Because I've been in the lineup. We've seen what happened with Jimmy in game one. We've seen a very different team in game two from the Heat side of things. What do you think is the adjustment for game three?
I mean, they've still got a lot of work to do on the defensive end as far as sticking to shooters. I would hope that their game plan is, get skinny around screens as much as you can. Keep pressuring guys like Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin and Max Strus and try to get them to regress to the mean. Like, the Heat were not a great three-point shooting team during the regular season.
No, they were not.
And I mean, they were, like the 27th ranked in the league. Like, start getting them back towards there, but don't let it just happen naturally. Like pressure them and try to, keep hands and faces on these 3-point attempts and hope that eventually things regress. And then as far as offense, I think run it more through Julius Randle, run it more through like secondary ball handlers. So like try to give Emmanuel quickly some on-ball reps and stuff like that to get him going, because he's had a tough time in these playoffs. And try to actually bring Jalen Brunson off ball more, because he's their most consistent 3-point shooter. And I think the more open looks you can get him, whether they're spot up or, self-created, for the best, because that's going to be the winning formula, I think, with Jalen Brunson.
The Julius Randle point is a good one. David, you and I were talking about that earlier in terms of how the Heat can adjust to the Julius Randle aspect of all of this. We're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. Also, what both teams saw on film that they hope to repeat, something that they want to wash away. We're going to play a game called Rinse or Repeat coming up after the break. But first, Alex, tell the listeners about our sponsor.
Yeah, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And for a championship team, maybe that's the Knicks, maybe that's the Heat, who knows? It's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle, and every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. I experienced this myself. I have a new Toyota Prius that I got. I've got a long commute for work, so I wanted to make sure I was getting good gas mileage. And had this one of my hubcaps just go flying off on the highway one day,
Wow.
and I had to replace it. And they told me it was going to be $100 at the dealer, and I was like, that seems like a lot of money. So I hit up eBay Motors, and I realized I could just take all my hubcaps off and put these nice little accents on the nice aluminum wheels underneath, and they would look just as good. Got out of it for $60, and I got to see that little green check mark and know that I was getting the right parts. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Thank you for making Locked On Heat and Locked On Knicks your first listen every day. Every day, or as both of these shows will be back after Game 3 with a recap of Game 3. We're going to play a game called Rinse or Repeat, but I want to just put a bow on something you touched on, both of you guys, Alex and David. The Julius Randle aspect of that. I thought that was a big takeaway in Game 2 for me, was how they were able to use Julius Randle as sort of a drive and kick guy against Miami's zone, and even the man-to-man stuff in the first quarter. But David, you were talking about it. It's something that you're keeping an eye on as well. What do you think the Heat can do to better defend Julius Randle and limit sort of that playmaking part of his game?
It's not an easy answer. I don't know if there is a solution necessarily. I think, with Jimmy expected back in the lineup, he's probably going to be much more willing to take that matchup on. I think that, you could see Jimmy switch on to Robinson or Hartenstein if he's in the game, and then see Bam go one-on-one with Randle a lot more often, maybe doubling him immediately. But, to Alex's point, that leaves a shooter open, whether it's Brunson or somebody else, and you don't necessarily want to take that chance. In Game 1, it paid off for Miami because they only shot, below 20% from three-point range, not so much in Game 2. It's not an easy fix, but I don't know that there is an answer necessarily, especially if he's got, if he's making those incredible passes the way he did in Game 2. There aren't a lot of answers for the Heat.
So let's play Rinse or Repeat. It's basically going back on the film, first 2 games. What do you want to kind of rinse away, wash away, something you don't want to see the team you cover do again? And then what's something that we want to see them repeat? So let's start with the negative stuff from the film. Alex, what's something that you want to see the Knicks just rinse off?
The inability to make shots. let's just get rid of that somehow. Wash that stink right off. I don't know what it is exactly that has led to the Knicks like suddenly not being able to hit a 3, but it was a common theme in the first series too. Like they shot under 30% against the Cavs after, like, I give the Knicks a ton of credit. They really scratched and clawed their way up the 3-point percentage standings this year. Like they started in roughly the same spot the Heat were in for the first like 2 months of the season. They were like 27th, 28th in the league in 3-point percentage. And by the end of the season, they were top 20. Because they just really found their groove, and they were spraying it out to shooters, and those guys were making it, whether it was Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, RJ Barrett at times, Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, I already mentioned, shot over 40%. They've got shooters on this team, and Obi Toppin too, who's shot pretty well from 3 at times. So, I think that's my main thing, is just kind of find yourselves. I hope that they're spending these 3 days, even if they're not practicing super heavy to help with the injury stuff, just shoot like 8,000 3-pointers a day, because I'm tired of seeing them miss these open shots. Like the first game, I really thought, especially the first half. Now I mentioned the second half, I thought Tibbs got kind of exposed, but the first half, I thought the Knicks generated so many amazing 3-point looks, and they were getting open look after open look after open look and just clanking them. And they could have been up by like 25 at the half in that first game had they just made those. And then maybe we're talking about a totally different series right now. So yeah, get rid of that. Start making threes. That's the thing I want to be rinsed of.
It was one of the storylines that I was thinking of coming into this series was the Heat shot like 44% from 3 in their first round series against the Bucks, something like that. And then the Knicks, I think they were at like 27% in their first round series against the Cavs. Unsustainable both ways, right? The Heat were never going to shoot 44% for an entire playoff run. and the Knicks were always going to shoot better than 27% at some point. So at what point did both kind of squads regress to the mean, right?
And meet in the middle. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When does it happen? Does it happen this series? If it does happen, does it happen too late for either team? Whatever happens. So it is something for the Heat too, I think, is just 3-point shooting. But David, what are you looking at as far as what the Heat can rinse away, wash away, get rid of it?
I know it's a common theme for our conversation so far. So it's injury, but yeah, I'm not going to go that's the easy route. I'm tired of seeing injuries on either side, especially going even back to the Bucks series for Miami, like losing Oladipo and Tyler Herro, et cetera. But it's the rebounding edge that New York has, because I think it's led to so many different opportunities. It was late in the fourth quarter where they got multiple offensive rebounds, and that would really change. I think it resulted in a Josh Hart quarter three, although there were a couple of those. I can't recall exactly what it was in context of the game itself, but the rebounding edge has been such a problematic. And for Miami, being as undersized as they are, again, no easy answer there. So it's a matter of a group mentality, being able to box out more effectively, collectively crash the boards and see if you can poke the rebound away. For all that Herro's talked about as a shooter, we often overlook the fact that for his position, he's actually a very good rebounder with a nose for the ball. Unfortunately, he's not going to be there in this series, so that's another lost rebounder for Miami. Caleb Martin, I think, can step up in that regard. I wonder if he gets more significant playing time. He's a better rebounder than Max Strus, so if he comes in there and plays a little bit of two alongside Jimmy Butler-led lineups, it could be a little bit more effective at crashing the boards.
I've got another offshoot rinse thing that I don't want to see. And this is directed at not the Miami Heat, and it's not directed at the New York Knicks. It's directed at the broadcast. Show the basketball game. Just show the basketball game. Less celebrities. They're going to be in Miami too. Maybe probably not as many as the ones at MSG, but just show the basketball game. Just show it. It's a basketball game. We're tuning in for the basketball game. I don't want to see DJ Khaled's face on my screen 17 times. I don't want to. I have no problem with DJ Khaled. I would love for him to be on the show. We could see his face on this screen, but I just want to watch the basketball game, and it feels like that's too much to ask.
Oh, no drones. Can we avoid drones too? Or
what was that with that Celtics Sixers game?
Yeah,
that was awful. That was like, what was that, like probably longer than that. I think it was probably pre-pandemic, where they used to do that courtside seat shot. Where it's like, hey, if you have a courtside seat right behind the stanchion, this is what it looks like, because you can't see anything.
No thanks. I don't need that view. Yeah,
just show the basketball game. No frills.
It does. Their presentation does often feel very like game 77 out of 82 at the end of the regular season sometimes, doesn't it? And it's like, we don't need these distractions at this point. Like, Knicks, what are you doing?
Show the game.
Yeah. It's a playoffs. That should be a good enough story to get people to watch, right? It's the playoffs. Like, no, we don't really need to try new things.
Yeah. No, but for, you want to hit, like, we want to do pop culture references, and look, it's John Hamm in the arena. You're like, all right, cool. Like, I enjoyed Mad Men, I guess. All right. Repeat. David, what do you want the Heat to repeat?
I know that we had this pre-planned, and yet I think it's Gabe Vincent's continued aggression.
That's what I had down. Yeah.
It's been such a bonus, and we saw it in the Milwaukee series too, especially late in that series. He was so effective in Game 5 and helping close out the Bucks without Herro. And I think this is a point that we've made on this podcast, but for the benefit of Knicks fans, without Herro, you need somebody to be able to put up shots, because sometimes they'll fall. In Gabe's case, they have been falling of late. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to stay consistent either. But just for him to be aggressive, because you get more opportunities that way, it keeps the defense off balance. Eventually, he'll be recognized as a threat and guarded as such. But he's been just so effective, whether it's beyond the line or getting into the rim, get past New York's larger defenders. He's been really, really good. And just to continue that level of aggression, I think is going to be a huge benefit. If Jimmy plays or not, it's necessarily going to be a factor.
Yeah. He was 7 of 17 overall in Game 2, 4 of 12 from three-point range, and that's why I had it down as my repeat. Is I say I don't care about the makes. With him, I care about the attempts. He's got to keep putting them up. That's the most important stat to me when it comes to Gabe Vincent, because if he does have an off shooting night, and the last one wasn't terrible, but if it's not like in fuego the way that it had been against the Bucks in a couple games and stuff like that, just keep doing it, man. You got to just keep doing it, because now with Tyler Herro out, you need somebody, one of those guards, to kind of step up and get those shots up. Alex, what about you? What do you want to see the Knicks repeat?
Common guy being discussed here, but he's so key to what the Knicks do at their best, and has been so good against the Heat this year. Julius Randle needs to keep playing in a way where he's making good decisions. He's very mercurial, in the sense that, and I mean, you literally got like the full experience of it, right? In that second half, it was like he wills them back by, attacking those double teams so well, making these great decisions, spraying it out to shooters, and, just being an offensive force in that way, which I think is when he's at his best, when he like does enough early in the game to make the other team say, all right, we have to really cover this dude, and then uses all that attention to just feed everybody else the rest of the game. I think that's like the best Julius Randle experience. But then obviously you got the worst of it too, like stepping over the baseline when you're going to inbound it and turning it over at a key moment and almost blowing the game for the Knicks. Like he's an interesting player. He's so talented and at his best makes fantastic decisions and is a fantastic passer and everything else. And yet sometimes just really makes you scratch your head and go like, dude, why did you just do that? Like, why did you make that pass right at that moment?
Yeah.
I just need like composure from him and to just keep doing what he does at his best, because if he does what he does at his best, he's the next best player. Like there's a reason he's probably going to make the All-NBA team this year and probably not Jalen Brunson. It's not just that the guard position is way more stacked than the forward position. Like Julius Randle was the Knicks rock this year. And when they played their best, it's because he's playing his best. And so that hopefully he can get fully healthy, or at least as close to fully as he can over these next few days, get lots of tape on that ankle, feel super confident, and be able to come out strong on offense and then make great decisions late, because that's going to be key for the Knicks.
I think I just checked my app. I still have stock in Julius Randle. I bought it like when he got drafted way back in the day. I never sold it. I kept a little bit of it. It's pretty up and down. It's pretty up and down. It's kind of like meta stock, and you just really never know what's going on.
Kind of like his career in general, I think. Up and
exactly.
Down, yeah.
So that's a big key is or things like that. We're also going to talk about some of the more minor players in the series. Which player can swing game 3? We're going to talk X factors. We're going to make our predictions for game 3 next here on our crossover edition of Locked On Heat and Locked On Knicks. Thank you for making Locked On Heat and Locked On Knicks your first listen every day. Every dayers, we're going to be back after Saturday's game 3 with a recap of that game on both of these podcast feeds. Let's talk X factors. David, biggest X factor for the Miami Heat?
Not your typical X factor, but a topic amongst Heat Nation over the last couple of days, and I think it's Bam Adebayo finding another level of aggression. I know we've argued it a number of times in this podcast, or our viewers and listeners are probably tired of us discussing it. And again, he is not your typical role player as far as what an X factor is normally considered to be. But if he can change his approach, I think he's needs to bring the ball up a little bit more frequently so he can kind of shift the defense a little bit, get better opportunities at the rim, draw New York's bigs out a little bit further from where their comfort zone is, or unless Randle picks them up along the perimeter or something along those lines. But I think that's just that it is so imperative for Bam to have it going, because they need his offense production. In addition to everything else he does as a passer, defender, etc., he needs to be more of an active scorer as well, and makes things easier for everybody, whether it's Jimmy or Miami's perimeter shooters, whether or not they're knocking those shots down. A lot of that balance will come from depending on whether or not Bam is much more effective as a scorer. So that to me is the biggest X factor in game 3.
Yeah. What did you see from Bam? What was your perspective of Bam Adebayo taking one shot in the fourth quarter of game 2, Alex? Is that something that was even sort of on your radar? Is that something you noticed?
A little bit. I mean, I did notice one thing that I feel good about if I'm the Knicks is the ability to potentially go small with Bam at center. And I think that Julius Randle is in a unique position where he can actually sort of check Bam a little bit. I got to be honest, I didn't notice that he only had one shot attempt. And maybe that's just because he's not exactly an offensive fulcrum. Like, of all the Heat's like big 3, like nominally of Butler, Herro, and Bam, like I feel like the one that you don't necessarily want to be the last man standing would be Bam, because he's not like the offensive fulcrum that those other 2 guys are. Like you mentioning like Gabe Vincent's got to keep getting up tons of shots, and like Caleb Martin and all these guys. It's because like Bam isn't that like offensive creator, unless I'm just miscasting him. But like, I know that he's pretty good from mid range. But like doesn't necessarily put the ball on the floor and like break guys down off the dribble or anything. He kind of schooled Mitchell Robinson, like I mentioned earlier, with like the the quick, like, give and go and pick and roll type plays where he can really, if he finds himself a sliver of space, he could just like slam in there and like go in for a dunk or whatever. And he's obviously very dangerous in that way too. I don't know. I think that Hartenstein is going to continue being the guy that I would keep wanting to
He
be
did a
on
better
him.
job than Robinson, I think.
Yeah, and it mostly just has to do with the fact that Mitch, like, again, I think is a little hobbled right now. And if he's not 100%, like, he's so lumbering, when he's not, like, he needs his full range of motion to be like more spry and keep up with these guys, on switches and with the hedges that Tibbs requires him to do, playing like drop coverage. But the Knicks have been definitely trying to like play a little less like pure drop and have him kind of like hedge up a bit and then recover. Right. And normally he's really good at that, but that's tough if you're not 100%. So if it were me, I would definitely keep Hartenstein on Bam and keep trying to keep those shot attempts low and just keep a body between him and the hoop and just a hand in his face. And hopefully that's enough. But I do think, we saw it only for a second, but they did experiment with Randle at the 5. And I do think that Bam is like a small enough center that I think that Randle can actually sort of keep him at bay a bit because he can at least challenge his shots credibly. Like whenever Randle tries to guard like Joel Embiid, it's just like, well, you can't get your hand within 6 inches of where he's shooting it from. So he's kind of just going to be able to get those off all day. Whereas with Bam, he can do it a little more credibly. So I kind of, as a Knicks fan, hope to maybe see that a little more by design to play a little small on Bam. But in the meantime, I think if Mitch could be healthy, he could be okay. But like Hartenstein definitely is going to be the guy I want to see on him most throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah, and on that Hartenstein matchup, you got to see Bam getting back to that mid-range look. We saw him in the first round against Brook Lopez, which is a similar-sized guy to Hartenstein. He just sort of pulls the ball out and like kind of gets a runway a little bit and just tacks him, just goes straight at him and tries to use his speed as more of an advantage as opposed to his size being an impediment. And so you just look, you cast Bam well, Alex. It's exactly how he is. He had 10 shots in game 2. He needs to have 15 shots. We're not talking about going out and shooting 28 times, right? He doesn't need to do that. He just needs to have 15 to 17 shots, and that makes a world of a difference in Miami's offense. Who's your X factor for the Knicks?
It is the guy who I will continue saying should have won 6th man of the year. Emmanuel Quickley, I think, is the X factor for the Knicks. I mean, he has just been. He should have been
6th man of the year, by the way. David, do you agree on that, or would you have had Brogdon?
I don't know.
All right, that's fine. That's okay. All right, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Alex.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I
thought we would get like a strong take from David, but we didn't get one. So
no, it's okay. I think the like national NBA media hive mind just decided that like starts should never count for 6 men, even ignoring the fact that 6 men by design should be the guy that you can most trust to slot into the starting lineup and show out, which Quickly did a number of times. Anyway, I digress.
Well, it's also if it wasn't Malcolm Brogdon playing for the Boston Celtics, we all know how the Boston media mob machine works, the propaganda machine. It robbed Bam of a Defensive Player of the Year award last year. This is just how they work. If a Celtic doesn't get an end of season award, I think the NBA just like goes under.
Unlikely allies here, man. Knicks and Heat fans might have more in common than they think,
Yeah. That's why John Corrales isn't allowed on the show anymore. We don't talk to him. He's banned. He's banned from the show.
We talk to John like once a year. That's enough.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So Quickly, I think, is the X factor because he was so much. He was such a big factor to the Knicks being as good as they were down the stretch of the season. Like not just stepping in and starting when they needed him, but off the bench, he was always a defensive menace. He pushes the pace. When he's trusted with the ball in his hands, he really does a great job creating for his teammates. Like he's just very crafty at getting inside, and then sort of similar to what I was saying about like Randle, like but in a different way. He's great at getting inside and then just having that vision to spray it out to whoever shakes free. And honestly, he's maybe even better than Brunson at that. I think thanks to his length and like the way that he attacks, which Brunson is kind of like just all out towards the hoop, whereas Quickly like loves to just get a guy on his hip and then just like play like stop start until he finds what he wants, and then he either goes for a floater or he hits a guy in the dunker spot or he kicks it out to the perimeter, and it's so valuable. The Knicks so far have not been having him initiate enough, I think. So like as strange as it seems to be, like this guy who's been struggling all postseason needs more opportunities to handle the ball and control the fate of the team. I think that's the case. Like, I think that's how he's most comfortable. He's most comfortable when he feels secure in his role as well. And when he feels secure in his playing time and everything else, like Quickly and Toppin drafted the same year and both have that same exact thing instilled in them. Like they both seem to always fear for their lives certain times when they feel like their rotation spot or their playing time or their role on the team isn't secure. But the second that you give them that like job security, they go off.
Respond. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And Quickly, I feel like has not had that. He's had kind of a quick hook this postseason, thanks to not playing as well and not hitting shots. And like, I think the 3-pointers, like hitting those can potentially unlock things. But we even saw in game 2, like he was finally starting to get going and Tibbs pulled him. And you're like, why? Like
he's getting too confident,
he's finally.
We're gonna see the Quickly game at some point. It's been way too long. Like it was a rough first round for him too. Like it's gonna happen. I don't know if it's gonna be game 3. My X factor is Duncan Robinson. He's shooting 80% on 3-pointers and in home games during these playoffs. So I think we're gonna get a big Duncan Robinson game at some point in the series. Is it gonna be game 3? I don't know, but I'm just sort of like waiting for the big Duncan game. I'm waiting for the big Quickly game. It's just going to happen, and then the opponent is going to have to respond to it and adjust. All right, we're running out of time here. Quickly, predictions for Game 3. Who wins it, David?
I think Miami gets that momentum on Saturday afternoon with Jimmy back in the lineup.
Alex, what do you think?
I'm going to go with my heart rather than my brain, and I'm going to say, you know what? I think the Knicks can do it. I think they can take Game 3. By a narrow margin. It'll be close as all of them have been, but I think they squeak it out like something like a 107 to 104 or something like that.
Well, unsurprisingly, it's 2-1. I think the Heat are going to win on Game 3. They do need to. I thought the Knicks did a really good job getting into their game in Game 3. The Heat are going to have to come out early and set the tone, and that's going to be a lot on Jimmy Butler. I think we're going to see an aggressive Jimmy Butler early in Game 3, and then he sets the tone, and the Heat go ahead and win Game 3 in Miami. But we'll find out. And then when we do, we'll be back. Both shows, Locked On Heat, Locked On Knicks, with recaps of that game. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat and Locked On Knicks your first listen every day. David, Alex, thanks for jumping on this crossover. Everybody else, thanks for listening. And till then, have a great weekend. Ooh.